Good evening, Yorktown, and welcome to the town board meeting for November 16th, 2021. If everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of
America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you could all please join me in a moment of silence as we keep in our thoughts and prayers all of our brave and courageous veterans who we celebrated this past weekend. If we can also keep in our thoughts and prayers all of our frontliners who continue to battle COVID, as well as our first responders, our police, fire, EMS, and of course, the brave men and women serving overseas, protecting our freedoms today, those in the United States military. Thank you.
Matt also, was it Chief Marchhauser?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and Officer Marshhauser of the Yorktown Police Department. We keep his family in our thoughts and prayers
Yes.
as he passed away earlier. I think it was today.
Mhm.
At the age of 91. God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Lachman. Introductions quick. I'll just go around as I see on the screen. Again, Supervisor Matt Slater, joined by Councilman Vishnu Patel, Councilwoman Alice Roker, Councilman Ed Lachterman, and Town Clerk Diana Quast. We also have with us our Town Attorney Adam Rodriguez. Deputy Supervisor and Town Councilman Tom Diana is not with us tonight, nor is our Highway Superintendent Dave Paganelli, and we wish them all the best.
Yes.
We had a report last week, but just a couple of things that I wanted to follow up on. Again, I want to thank Paul Martin and the committee who hosted our Veterans Day Parade on Sunday. Thank you to everyone who came out and marched along East Main Street. It was a great tribute to the men and women who protected our freedoms and protected the promise of America for future generations. I want to remind folks, Holiday Lights Parade is back, the traditional Holiday Lights Parade down Commerce Street. We're very excited about it. It is going to be December 4th. The deadline for floats is this coming Monday, November 22nd. So please contact the Parks and Rec Department if you plan on joining us for what's turned out to be a very great tradition here in the town of Yorktown and in a kickoff of the holiday season. The Christmas Carol, speaking of Christmas and the holidays, the Yorktown Stage is going to be hosting a Christmas Carol, which we're very excited about. It starts November 26th and it runs November 26th, November 27th, November 28th, and then after Christmas, December 26th, December 30th, and 31st. This is the set itself was designed and brought in from Europe. We are very, very excited to have this great play here in our community. The stage is back, theater is back in Yorktown. If you missed the Halloween horror cabaret, you missed a great treat, and it's the same people putting this on. They are actually, the director is a local resident here in the town of Yorktown, and we thank her and her husband for being leaders in this great cause, and we look forward to seeing everybody at the Yorktown Stage. This Saturday is the Great Fall Cleanup. As a reminder, we traditionally do the Battle of Yorktown in the spring. This Saturday, November 20th, we are doing the Great Fall Cleanup, just like we do at our houses, a fall cleanup of our town. If you would like to participate, please call the Refuse and Recycling Department at 914-245-4438, and they will provide you with the area for you to clean up, as well as the necessary bags for the orange litter bags. Again, as part of Battle of Yorktown that occurred on April 24th, we had 86 groups, approximately 500 volunteers, and they picked up more than 17,000 pounds of roadside litter and debris. So again, we're doing it again this Saturday, November 20th, and we look forward to seeing everybody out on the streets of Yorktown helping us keep our town beautiful. Our pediatric vaccine clinic for 5 to 11-year-olds is going to be Saturday from 2 to 6 at the Cappellini Center. You must register in order to receive a vaccine. You can do so right on the town's website, and the link is right on our homepage to sign up for Saturday's pediatric vaccine. That's a Pfizer pediatric vaccine for those 5 to 11-year-olds. We also have our next vaccine booster clinic, which is going to be Tuesday, the 23rd from 2 to 4 p.m. also at the Cappellini Center. Again, registration is required and can be found online right on the town's website. And lastly, did receive from Rabbi Haber, the Hanukkah menorah lighting will be November 28th at 4 p.m. over at Veterans Field. It will also be, they will also be having the Hanukkah car parade that is set to begin at 3:20 p.m. Again, that's November 28th. Hanukkah is early this year, and we look forward to kicking it off with Rabbi Haber and our neighbors who are celebrating. Again, so if you want to participate in the car parade, you meet at the Habatz at 2629 Old Yorktown Road. At 3:45 sharp, the parade will begin. And then again, 4 p.m., it culminates at the Jack DeVito at the Veterans Field and over at the track with a public menorah lighting and fire juggling show. So we're very, very excited. What the flyer says. So we're very excited again and thank Rabbi Haber for leading this great cause in our community. It is, the holiday season is starting to quickly approach us. Oh, and I also forgot to mention the Turkey Trot, the Hudson Valley Turkey Trot is back in action. We already have over 200 participants signed up for the Turkey Trot. It's Thanksgiving morning. So before you sit down and enjoy that great meal, come on out and take a nice 5K run with us through the Heights Hamlet up to 118 and back. I want to thank the Roadrunners Club for again partnering with our organizers. I want to thank Terrence Murphy, who is organizing it yet again, and all of the proceeds are going to benefit local food pantries. Local food pantries here in Yorktown, food pantries in Peekskill, and food pantries in Mayapack. And of course, it also goes to support a wonderful organization, United for the Troops, Jim Rathschmidt and Patty Rathschmidt. So every single dollar raised goes towards a not-for-profit. So it's a great cause to mark your calendars. Thanksgiving morning again, and we'll be sharing more information on the race throughout the week. With that concludes my report to the town. I'll pass it over to Councilman Vishnu Patel.
Well, I think I'm going to give a shortest one. It was a very nice parade for the veterans. We honor them. And this is our duty to honor them because what they have done it for the nation to keep our freedom alive. Freedom is not free. So thank you each and everyone who participated in a parade as well as all the ceremonies, whatever happens in the town. Everybody was united in a celebration and honoring our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Patel. And again, thank you to your son and daughter for their service to our country as well. The community is very, very proud of them. Councilwoman Roker, report to the town.
Yeah, I don't think we could say thank you enough to the veterans who really put their lives on the line for us. I don't know that we have the words to thank them, but I do want to remind everyone that the Senior Advisory Committee on Friday will hold a discussion on those annoying commercials with regard to open enrollment for Medicare. All of those commercials are connected to a company.
Right.
You don't have to speak to a company. There is a way. The county has staff that you can speak to and get the same information without locking yourself into a company. And I think that is really important that, you hear all of these claims by people, you can get more money, you can get this or that. I never believe anything is free. So I'm always a skeptic. And I think I'm looking forward to just listening to these specialists who's coming from the county to talk to us about Medicare open enrollment.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. Councilman Lachterman, report to the town.
Sure. Well, I'll start with what Councilwoman Roker was talking about. Also, you need to be aware, and I'm very happy that the Senior Advisory Committee is taking this on and trying to bring it to its members. You have to be aware of the people calling as well, that you do not need to talk to them. And Alice, there's a word that a science fiction writer I used to read way back used to use, which is Tanstoffel. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It's
There you
not
go.
done. And you're absolutely right. They promise the world. My mother-in-law it's cost her more in hours being on the phone with these people after she made a change because they suggested it and realized it was not a good change for her.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get back around. Then I'll also add my thanks to all that came out and celebrated our veterans with us. In the morning, the Sons of the American Legion did a breakfast that was complimentary to all veterans that wanted to attend. I will say it was one of our best attended breakfasts, and everyone had an excellent time. And I see Mr. Tegeter on the phone. I'll thank him and his son's group for coming down from the Mayapack squadron and joining us. And hope you enjoyed your breakfast, John. So
pancakes were excellent.
Thank you. And then, of course, a shout out to Paul Martin, who did do so much work for the parade, and that was not the only thing he did during the weekend or during the whole period. On Thursday, the Sons of the American Legion put up 13 new flags in front of Railroad Depot, and those flags were dedicated to the 13 soldiers who lost their lives in Afghanistan, and they will remain up through the year. Those are flags that we will replace as often as need to be replaced, but just as a reminder for the fact that any veteran who puts on the uniform puts their life at risk for our country, and we appreciate it. And when they pay the ultimate sacrifice, we want to make sure that they are remembered for that. And then, just to also thank the police department, fire department, and Parks and Recreation for their help in making sure the parade was successful. It is a town-wide event. We get the town people and employees all helping out together, and it's just a great thing. As Councilman Patel pointed out, the unity of the day and the celebration of our veterans is what it's all about. Oh, one last thing. The Yorktown Teen Center is open this Friday, 11/19. They will have the use of the gym, and they'll have basketball and pizza down there. And they're doing something that is nice, which is members can bring a non-member friend and be entered to win a free Friday at the Teen Center. So,
Nice.
yeah, really, really nice thing for the kids to get out, expel a little energy, socialize, and enjoy a nice evening at our Teen Center. And that is it for me.
Thank you, Councilman Lachman. I forgot to add also a big thank you to Anthony DeVito of the DeVito Foundation and our friends at the Yorktown Lions Club. Councilman Patel, I don't know if you stopped by recently, but the ramp is
I
nearly,
go every day.
it's looking really good. They should be completed with the first stage of our renovation of the gazebo this weekend. And we got to spend some time I spent some time Saturday with them. And it was a lot of fun. Great group of people, great group of neighbors who were out there. And I actually got to use some power tools without hurting anybody, which was a big plus.
They let you use them?
They let me,
They weren't plugged in, Alice. They were not plugged in. You just got to play with them.
But it was a great time. So to all the volunteers who've come out the last 2 weekends, thank you very much. We will be out there again on Saturday morning for what we hope is the final time to get this renovation completed. But the rail, the handicap rail going up to the gazebo, for the most part, is now complete, and they were making some final adjustments to it. So again, thank you to all, and again, thank you to the Lions Club. The Lions Club actually just picked up the tab for the last order of wood that was needed, and so I really want to thank the Lions Club for stepping up and doing that for us as well to make sure this project got done.
And that was also unanimously voted on by the board to approve that. So thank you, Yorktown Lions board.
Thank you, Yorktown Lions. Great.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we are going to forego the report from our highway superintendent, and we'll turn it over to John McMullen, our poet laureate. John?
Thank you. And in keeping with what Eddie just said, I have on my overpriced veterans thing with my name on it, everything to replace my worn uniforms. And in keeping with this national veterans thing, I'll read a poem that I wrote a few years ago.
Okay.
Tommy Minogue didn't decide. Tommy Minogue, the younger brother of the friends from my old neighbor, didn't decide to send advisors to Vietnam. Dwight Eisenhower did. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to send special forces to Vietnam. John F. Kennedy did. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to escalate the war on the phony Gulf of Tonkin story. Lyndon Johnson did. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to heavily bomb North Vietnam. Richard Nixon did. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to bring the troops home. Gerald Ford did. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to go to Vietnam. The Army sent him. Tommy Minogue didn't decide to win the Distinguished Service Cross. It was awarded posthumously. And Tommy Minogue, they have just renamed a BFW place out on Long Island for him. He was put up for the Congressional Medal after the heroic action that killed him. But however, it was shot down at the highest level because there were many Congressional Medal in his unit. It had been trying ever since then to get it for him. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. We do have a presentation tonight that we're very excited to hear. I do want to welcome our members of our planning department. We have our Director of Planning, John Tegeter, Robin Steinberg, our town planner. We have with us several of our consultants from BF&J Planning. We have Frank Fish, Taylor Young, and Sarah Yackel, and Scott Levine from the Transpo Group. This is in regards to the proposed overlay districts that we have been working on. Just as a recap, the town has been working on this since last summer, trying to put the legislation together and engaging members of the community, and ultimately bringing on what we felt were some of the best experts, planning experts that we can find in BFJ. We did an RFP for that, and we were able to work with Transpo and Scott Levine as one of the transportation consultants for the town, and they are working together to prepare an EAF for the proposed overlay districts. Again, the proposed overlay districts that we have right now are the Heights Hamlet Overlay District and the Osceola Overlay Districts. Those are the two districts that we are focused on. This is not focused on any particular project, but the districts themselves. And so I want to begin with just John Tegeter quickly. John, anything that you want to add about the process that we're engaged in the EAF?
I don't think so. This is tonight to, bring to the board some of the meat and potatoes that this team has come to know through their investigations. And subsequent to that, I think sometime next week, the EAF in its near or final form will be in your hands for your process and your public hearing to be set. So
great. And I really want to thank our planning department for being so active and engaged in this entire process. They've been fantastic. And I really want to thank our consultants from BFJ and Transpo. They've been wonderful as well, providing weekly updates to me as they've moved through their investigatory process to provide the best product that they could for the town. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank Fish. Mr. Fish, if you want to take control of the presentation and walk the board through what you guys have studied and found, and we look forward to hearing about your determinations.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Taylor Young is going to try to do that now in terms of sharing his screen. And while Taylor's doing that, I'll just sort of give a very brief intro on us. BFJ Planning is represented tonight by myself as one of the principals. And then I think, Taylor, if you can bring up the next slide, you'll see the name. Sarah Yackel is here. She'll be giving part of the presentation and is a principal of BFJ. And then Taylor Young has acted as the senior planner and also our project manager. And Scott, are you on? I'll let you introduce yourself and Transpo.
I sure am. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again. So I'm with Transpo Group, and I'm also a professor of planning at SUNY.
Great.
Excellent.
So the next slide just starts us off on sort of why we're here and sort of what have we been asked to do. And the supervisor's already given you the two sites there in red here on the screen, and really the Yorktown Heights overlay and then Lake Osceola. And what we've been asked to do is an environmental assessment form, or EAF, for each of the rezoning areas. They are each, by the way, in separate, as I'm sure the town board knows, of course, in separate school districts, and we'll come to that later, but there's a full EAF for each of these districts. The next slide just goes a little bit more into what is SEEKR. And you have before you, as the supervisor mentioned and John's mentioned, and you're very familiar with the overlay districts, which you've gone through in some detail prior to this. Those, in order to adopt zoning of that nature, actually in order to adopt zoning or take a land use action that's significant, you really have to comply with the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And of course, we call that for short SEEKR, the SEQR, State Environmental Quality Review. And it just requires, as this slide says, sort of that state and local agencies affect the, really discuss and examine the effects of their discretionary actions. And of course, in reviewing or adopting zoning is a discretionary action for the board. So also, you've got to consider in your decision-making environmental factors, and the EAF is a state form, actually, that goes through that decision-making. And the little graphic here goes through some of the impacts that are reviewed on the form. As transportation needs, social impacts. In our case tonight, we're going to go through school impacts, utilities, water, sewer. And then there's a provisions through SEEKR for public input. So that's a sort of a multidisciplinary approach to environmental decision making. And here, this next slide just goes through really sort of environmental. Let me just try to summarize this a little bit. The environmental assessment form parts. What we've done for, or in process of now, is part one, and that is the sort of a 20-page, when you get it, it'll be a little bit more probably, it's a 20-page or so state form, but on the form we're going to attach some appendices to it so that you'll have before you the ability to make and assess the impacts of the action. So first there's the full, we classify the action, it's action that is subject to SEEKR. We go through coordination. In this case, you are the only ones that can be what's called the lead agency, because only in state law, the town board's the only agency that can adopt zoning. So what we hope to do tonight is go through with you the part one. And once we get that to you, and we're hoping to do that after our discussion tonight, after that, there's a part two that the state has published, and it allows you to assess the impacts identified in part one. If your assessment of those impacts is that they do not have any significant adverse impact on the environment, that's part three. It's called a negative declaration. And if that is the case, that is that there is no significant adverse impact, then that ends SEEKR with what's called the negative declaration. If you can see the chart here on the right, if there was or is a significant impact, an adverse impact that you identify, then that would require a positive declaration and you'd move on to an EIS. So that's a sort of discussion of the EAF. We hope, and you'll see in this assessment, that we have not identified thus far a significant adverse impact. We've identified some minor impacts. We've identified some beneficial impacts. And as we go through this, we'll try to talk about those. So the next slide is just to now just go through. There's two, as I mentioned, just two zoning overlays. So just starting with Yorktown Heights, we're trying to review potential future development in each of these, because in order to determine the impacts of the overlay zone, you have to make some estimate. Well, if you adopt the zone, what does it mean in terms of potential development? And so we're going to try to do that for both. We'll try to do that for both Yorktown Heights and for Osceola Lake Osceola. We're not going to get into that in terms of directly reviewing the projects that have been already approved. What we're going to do here is we put into this process projects that are on the board, projects that have been submitted to the town, or also what we call, and you'll see this later, soft sites or potentials. If you were to adopt this zoning, are there some vacant sites that could be developed? So the new zoning, as you know, permits generally up to 3 stories, although in certain cases over 10 acres, 4 stories. And it does allow, the key is it allows residential. So it does allow some mixed use buildings and residential buildings in Yorktown Heights. And I think that's the key to this zoning. So the next slide gets into.
Frank, can I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
John, can you just identify, because I don't want people to get confused. Frank said that there were projects that were approved and projects that were proposed. John, can you just identify what those approved projects are versus the proposed?
There's really the one, I think, is the Wyant.
Right.
Projects that have been proposed are projects that have come to the town board either for, kind of a first look discussion, or possibly have been actually formally applied for. So the Kmart site came in, and also the Soundview School has come in. And you did see, I think, you've had at least one presentation on the small building at the corner of Veterans Road and Commerce Street that is proposed to be a small boutique hotel. And also, you did have seen the Roma building, which was before you for a significant amount of time and did some significant work. And while that is inactive, I think that it will be looked at in terms of what that proposal was putting forth at the time.
If I can just thank you, John, and hold on 1 second here, because we're having some technical difficulties in this presentation. I think it's just too important for screens to be blank. And so if you're watching on TV, I've gotten a bunch of text messages, and our tech team here is letting us know as well. But so let's just take a pause for 2 minutes, if we could. Tommy, can you tell me what's going on? Okay, 2 minutes. We're just going to take a pause for 2 minutes because I just want to make sure people can see the screens before we continue.
Can I ask the people on the Zoom call? Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see it, but the folks who are either watching on TV or online cannot. So
okay,
just give us 2 minutes here to rectify this, and once we're back on, then we'll continue.
Is there any hard copies exist, or this is just the first presentation?
It's just the first presentation, but this will be available.
Taylor, can you stop sharing your screen for a minute? Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I think we're back. We apologize for the technical difficulties that we had, but we will continue with the presentation. So Taylor, if you can reshare your screen. And then Frank, if you could
Yep.
take over, that'd be great.
Yeah, very good. Okay. So,
Everyone see again?
good, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's good, yeah. So I think, and I think we've covered this slide. I just wanted to highlight the black is the area in Yorktown Heights, the black line there that really encapsulates where the proposed overlay zone would go. And we started to examine what impacts could be in that site. And then the next slide, we'll go over Lake Osceola. And in Lake Osceola, it's the same sinker approach to looking at impacts of potential development that could happen if the overlay zone were adopted. And again, in the boundary that you can see there, surrounded in the black, that's the black line that outlines that area. And actually, this one is a little bit different from Yorktown Heights for the reason that we did two options here. One is a no sewer system, but continued, well, there is some sewer, as you all know, on Hill Boulevard, but in general, most of the area does not have sewer. And this, so there's two options here. One is that continued reliance on septic, but the second option would be the town has in its master plan and has sought to have sewer in this area really to provide a better environment and quality, water quality in Lake Osceola. So we looked at both of these options. So those are the two overlay zones that we're going to look at, that we have started to look at in terms of their overall impacts. And then the next slide really goes over some differences in area-wide impacts. And I'm going to turn this to Sarah Yackel from our office, who's going to just go over the difference between an area-wide action, which is what we're examining, and site-specific action. So Sarah, with that, I'll turn it to you.
Good evening, Supervisor Slater, members of the board. I think this slide is important because of the EAF that you will receive. There's some nuance here in the form and how it gets filled out depending on the type of action before you. As Frank said, the proposed overlay districts are area-wide actions. You know, in this case, it's a zoning law that refers, it's a larger area and does not mandate any development. So zoning falls into that category. Once this zoning is in place, there are no developments that will have approval to begin construction. There are no shovel in the ground impacts that result from an area-wide action. And that's different than a site-specific action, which is an actual development project. And that would follow on from this EAF and this seeker process. So following adoption of the overlay district, any property owner wishing to opt into that district or develop under these new regulations would be required to submit a site plan application to the planning board and prepare a site-specific environmental assessment form. And that would look at, you know, impacts related, very site-specific impacts related to circulation and access and egress if there were natural resources on a site, wetlands, or, you know, trees to be removed, and all of those very, very fine-tuned site-specific impacts that we can't speculate on those at this stage because we don't know where buildings will be located. We don't know what property owners will be, you know, choosing to develop. And so our analysis here is much more generic. And to that end, the form treats area-wide impacts very differently. And so you can see it's probably very hard for you to see. But when you receive the EAF, hopefully Friday or the following Monday, you'll see very early on in the form, there's this question C.1, planning and zoning actions. And the question asks, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, rule, or regulation be the only approval which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? And in this case, the answer to that is yes. And what that means for the form is because the form really is designed for an actual development project, if you answer yes to this question, you basically are instructed to skip almost the entire rest of the form because all of the remaining questions are about details of an actual development, which in this case we don't have. You will see some of the answers may be filled out because there is what's called the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, has an environmental assessment form mapper that you're required to kind of map the boundaries, and it may spit out some answers automatically. For instance, if you have any endangered species in the area, or if there are archaeological sensitivity, some of those things may get flagged. But don't be alarmed when you see the form and there are things missing. We're just following the instructions per state law.
Sarah, if I can ask a question, and
course.
again, other board members feel free, I think, to ask questions as we go along. But to the point that you made earlier about specific projects, but this does not take those specific projects off the hook, correct?
Absolutely,
They're
correct.
still going to have to go through and essentially fill out the rest of the form
Right.
based on their project. I just want to make
Exactly, and
I
in
know this is very
addition,
nuanced, but I want to
in
make
ad-
sure that the public understands that.
Exactly. So any developer that or property owner seeking to develop under these regulations would be required to, submit an application, submit project plans, comply with the state law, and it could mean they do an environmental assessment form, they fill out all of the questions, but they will also need to attach a site-specific traffic analysis. They may need to do some additional, supplemental analyses. But it also doesn't preclude the board or the planning board from requiring a full environmental impact statement. Say somebody comes in and proposes something that is so far beyond what we were anticipating here,
Right.
in terms of build out, or they, manage to assemble a large number of parcels, and it's a big development. They may still be required to go through that full environmental impact statement, and that's none of what we're doing now precludes that later process. Exactly.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that and that the public's clear on that as well.
Right, because to do it now, we would be speculating and it would be inaccurate because we don't know what those developments would look like and what they're actually going to propose. Taylor, next slide. So just a little bit more, I think I've covered a lot of these things, but area-wide review is more general and conceptual in nature. It looks at sort of the order of magnitude of potential future impacts. It makes assumptions. We explain all of those assumptions. And it basically creates an envelope of which we're then analyzing those impacts. Where site-specific review considers impacts related to development on a specific parcel. And as I said, site-specific review will occur during site plan review, not the actual rezoning. Next slide, Taylor. And in terms of the EAFs that we're preparing for Yorktown Heights and Lake Osceola, we'll be providing, in addition to that state form, because if we just provided you with the state form with most of the answers left blank, you don't really have any information to be able to move forward with preparing a part 2 and then ultimately a part 3 and a neg deck. So what we will be providing is an introduction explaining the process and the project, a project description. We'll attach that state form, and then we'll also include a number of attachments that will provide the development projections that we've created in conjunction with the planning department. And that's really the basis for what we're calling the build out, a reasonable build out scenario over the next 10 years of what we think could be developed under the zoning reasonably. A projection of public school children, a traffic analysis, and then a look at the water and sewer infrastructure impacts. With that, I'm going to turn it to Taylor to talk about some specifics.
Yes, hello and good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm here to talk about the development projection. So as Sarah alluded to, and Frank, our development projection is a number of units that we think could be constructed, could be developed over the next 10 years. So we think 10 years is a good number. It's within the future. It's far enough away, but not so far that it would kind of be meaningless if it's too far out, because who knows? So what we did in Yorktown Heights is we met with the supervisor, the planning department, and reviewed, some of these developments that the town knows about. Either they've come in, for a presentation, an initial presentation, or the supervisor and planning department have talked with the developer and kind of know what's going on. We have used the plans that we know about to the best degree that we have, so that they're accurate, and taken them, and that's Underhill Farms, Yorktown Green, the Roma development, and the Boutique Hotel. And we've taken the exact number of units which we have, you see here, is 345 units and 18 hotel rooms. Taking those projections and applied them. And then we did a soft site analysis. And a soft site analysis is the town has no idea. They do not know anything about these sites, but looking at a map, we can say, okay, these sites may be developed under the zoning because the zoning makes it incentivizes a redevelopment or something similar like that. And so we take that total development potential from those sites and then reduce it to a percentage of that development. So that's why we came up with 60 units that way. So altogether with the known development sites, these are the sites that the town knows about. The soft sites, which are the ones that we're just kind of using it, not an educated guess, but we're analyzing it, that these could be developed and then reducing that number. That is 405 units total and 18 hotel rooms. And you'll also see it's a reduction of 92,464 commercial square feet. And that is mostly due to the Kmart site. So with the units, the residential units projections, we can take that and project the number of school-aged children that will come, or that would be generated, as we say, by those units. So these units, as best we know, or what we calculated them as, are market rate multifamily units. So they are broken up into townhomes and apartments. Now we are aware that one of the developments proposed 54 townhomes, and then it's our assumption or what we understand about the rest of the developments, that those will all be multifamily units. Townhomes are attached single-family homes, which tend to have more children than multifamily apartments. So we use a different multiplier for townhomes and apartments. And we used two different sources. There's Rutgers. It's a study from Rutgers University, which is a standard across our industry for school-aged children projections. And then we used our observations over with 40 years of planning in Westchester County to give a range of projections. And as you see here, we are projecting between 40 and 49 school-aged children would come out of these 405 units over 10 years.
That's considering if all of the units are built, right?
Yes, that's correct. So we are assuming each one of these 405 units is constructed in the next 10 years. And then the students would come in the same 10 years.
So that's a question because it many times has happened to us that not every proposed developer actually comes in. So it is possible that not all of this development may happen, but we took a fairly conservative approach on that every developer who's that the planning department knew about, and we had some plans for them, we did take that into consideration.
Thank you, Frank.
So couching this in the background of the Yorktown Heights Central School District, the data you see here is from the New York State Education Department. It's public data. And then the projection is from the school district's projections. So we've taken the total enrollment, from the 20 to 2021 school year back to the 2011 to 2012 school year is down. It's down. It's about right. The school children in 20 to 21 were 3,381. That's less, than it has been every year, right? And that's just total enrollment. Now the mid-range school district projections. This is from the school district. They project that in the 2027 to 2028, the enrollment will be 3,512. So that's an increase from this year or this most recent year, but it's about the same as 2013 and 2014. So just kind of giving a background information of where this projection is fitting into. So kind of also bringing this even wider, the town's population, so the new census data is out for 2020, not fully detailed, but just, overall, and it's up, I believe about 475 from 2010, which is the most recent, so 10 years. It's up, but it's, 400, 500 people, relatively steady. But as you saw, the school district has been the enrollment has been going down, and where we think this leads to is that the trends in birth rates or the fertility rate across the country. This chart is from the CDC, so this is nationwide, but we've seen it in other places. We've seen New York State and we've seen Westchester County, and it's the same story, which is that birth rates peaked, obviously in 1960, but recently they peaked 30 years ago, and they've been going down ever since. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Scott for a discussion of traffic and transportation.
Great, thank you very much, Taylor. Okay, so you're going to see attached, stapled to each of the EAF forms, the environmental assessment forms, two separate analyses, one for the Heights, one for Lake Osceola. So I'm going to talk right now about the Heights, and then we'll come back later and we'll talk about Lake Osceola separately. So what you can expect to see in these analyses, we'll be first looking at the context. So we'll be looking at what are traffic volumes in the area, what do we know about congestion in the area, traffic flow, etc. What do we know about the crash history of the area? So we've been working with the Yorktown PD and with the New York State Department of Transportation on recent patterns of crashes in the area. We'll be looking at the Beeline services and bike and pedestrian activity. And all of that is really to establish where are things today in terms of mobility, movements in and around these two parts of town. The core question that we're asking is really in the second part. How would implementing this overlay zoning impact the overall amount of travel, which we're measuring as the number of trips? So the question in terms of impacts is, will the overlay zoning lead to increased travel at particular times of day over the course of a typical weekday, Saturday, etc.? And as you heard from my colleagues a few minutes ago, this is very much an area-wide analysis. We're looking at the system as a whole here. We're not getting into individual driveways. Do we need a turn lane here, etc.? All of those are site-specific analyses, which all of that, the full robust analysis of that would take place as individual development applications come into the planning department. Next slide, Taylor. Okay, so we take as an input to the traffic analysis, we take what Taylor has just presented to you a few moments ago, the incremental development as the main input. And then we do some math, and you see over on the right-hand slide, I won't bore you all to death this evening, there's some math. And what that math is doing is it's relating the amount of incremental development of different types, whether it's the townhomes or apartment units or commercial buildings, et cetera. So the amount of development to the amount of travel, the amount of trips that would be generated. This is called a trip generation. Right. And in Yorktown Heights, it's a very different set of issues than in Lake Osceola. In Yorktown Heights, really it's a balancing. The question is a balancing between the increase in residential versus the decrease in commercial, the Kmart site that was mentioned a few moments ago. And you've seen that there's an open question of whether or not sewer may or may not be brought to Lake Osceola as a separate action. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later. This trip generation analysis looks at the number of trips over the course of a day, a typical weekday. It looks at the typical morning rush hour and late afternoon, evening rush hour, and also Saturday, the busiest midday period on a Saturday, which is important for shopping districts. Next slide, Taylor. Okay, so here's the outputs of that trip generation analysis for the Heights. And again, Lake Osceola will come a little bit later. So in the Heights, there's this large decrease in the commercial space, mainly associated with the Yorktown Green property. So the balancing, on balance, the increase in the residential units is outweighed by the decrease in commercial space. So we have, over the course of a typical weekday, something like 3,500 fewer trips would be made versus if that site were to be occupied. Over the course of a morning peak hour, that's 11 or so trips, so what, a vehicle every 5-6 minutes, something like that. And over the course of a weekday afternoon, the afternoon peak hour, it's something like 10% of the daily total. So in the heights, the conclusion is a decrease in the potential for trip making because of the replacement of commercial space with less, more light generating residential space. Next slide, Taylor. All right, let me hand it back to you, Taylor.
All right, so moving on to Lake Osceola, which, as we've discussed, has two projections, both septic and sewer. Those are kind of the two scenarios, right? But unlike Yorktown Heights, there are no known sites. The town is unaware of any redevelopment plans for anything within the overlay boundary. So we did the same thing that we did in Yorktown Heights. We looked at these potential places or soft sites, and then took that development potential and then reduced it because nothing is 100% ever going to get built. So with the septic system, we have a lower projection because you can't build as much with septic. Septic limits, a site development, whereas sewer, a developer or someone could build more, more square footage on a site because the waste would be pumped out. So, and then also townhomes versus apartments. So we are unaware of any plans, but what we did is thought, similar to Yorktown Heights, it's a mix. It's not just one. So we took 20%. We said, let's break it up and say 20% are going to be townhomes and the remainder will be apartments. And so that's where we came up with these townhomes versus apartment numbers. We project that with a septic only system, so no sewer, 52 total units, 10 of which are townhomes, 42 are apartments. And then with a sewer, 28 townhomes and 111 apartments for a total of 139 units. So looking, this chart's a little bit different, but comparing the Rutgers and the BFJ numbers, you see with the same thing, you see that we use two different multipliers for townhomes and apartments. With just septic, which is the top part of this table, we are projecting 6 to 7 students, or school-age children, and then with the sewer system, which would be more units, we're projecting between 16 and 18 school-age children for the Lake Osceola zoning overlay.
And Taylor, I just wanted to add there that we're in, I think everyone knows, we're in a different school district here, Lake, yeah.
Yes, and so this is the same chart we showed earlier. This is New York State public education data. And so it shows that the Lakeland Central School District, this is total district enrollment, what you see on the chart is down over the past 10 years. And then if you look closer, elementary, middle, and high school enrollment is down across the board. And so I will give this back to Scott for transportation.
Sure. Okay. So in Lake Osceola, again, very different context, very different set of transportation issues compared to the Heights. Here, there's basically a wash in the commercial space. So there's the build-out analysis that Taylor just described has very little projected change in the amount of commercial space, but it does have the increase in the amount of residential space, the amount of residential units. So therefore, the conclusion in Lake Osceola is an increase in trip making. And you see at the bottom, it's over the same, we analyze the same periods, a 24-hour weekday, the different rush hours on weekdays and Saturdays. And it varies by whether there's sewer or there's not sewer brought in at some later date. Now, next slide, let me put these numbers into perspective. So it's roughly 300 trips per day if sewer were to be built, and roughly 700 without. So if we look at East Main Street, the DOT traffic counts are something like 10,000 vehicles per day. And if we look at Route 6, just to the south of Lake Osceola, the current traffic count is about 20,000 vehicles per day. So add them together, we get about 30,000 vehicles traveling east-west together between East Main Street and Route 6. So the projected trip generation, the increase in the amount of travel would be very roughly 1% if the overlay zoning is brought in and sewer is not brought in. So it remains on the sorts of systems that Taylor described a few minutes ago. And we're comfortable that that is unlikely to be a significant impact. However, if sewer is brought later into this area, the increase in trips is something like 3%. So it's about 3 times as much as the increase without sewer. And that's an open question. So it's a different set of potential outcomes if sewer is later brought into Lake Osceola.
So, Frank, would you like to summarize the key dates?
Yeah, I'll just kind of try to summarize where we think we are with the EAF. We're hoping that we can, based on tonight's discussion, I'm sure you'll have questions and comments, but what we're hoping to do is, after tonight, is to actually get to you a completed EAF. We wanted to take tonight and just describe to you what's in it so that when you get it, you'll already know pretty much what its conclusions are, what its components are. And as Sarah said, you won't be surprised when section D and E of the form is not fully filled out because the state doesn't want it filled out, that type of thing. So we're hoping to do that and get that to you prior to the 23rd. We're hoping to finish that up this week and send it to John Tegeter so it can be distributed to the board prior to your meeting on November 23rd. What Sinker says is for a public hearing dealing with Sinker issues, you really should have the part 1, because the part 1 allows you to, as lead agency, to in your public hearing to then also allow the public to comment on that part 1. So we'll have that to you, we hope, by this Friday or Monday prior to your November 23rd meeting. So you'll have copies of it available for your meeting. And I think there was a question earlier. I think all of it can be put, as soon as you have the EAF, that can all be put on the website and be accessible to the public. So if you chose to, on the 23rd, to then hold a public hearing on the zoning on, say, December 7th or a date that you choose, the public could comment both on the zoning itself, but it could also have the ability to comment on the EAF because the public will have access to it. Anybody will be able to read it. And then after the hearing, after the public hearing, what is usually done is the part 2 of the EAF is completed, and that evaluates the impacts, whether they're large or not. If any are large, are they significant? So we think so far what we've identified are some impacts, but we would rate them as small or moderate impacts and not something that would require an environmental impact statement. But that decision is up to the board, after the public hearing, when you get a filled out draft EAF form, part 2. So that's what we see as a possible schedule for you. And with that, I think maybe I would turn it back at this point to the supervisor, to Matt.
Thank you, Frank. And I really want to thank your entire team. I thought it was a very well done presentation. I want to see if the board has any questions from what they saw at this point in time.
Isn't this very aggressive, the dates? Did you hear the forecast could be a very big storm is coming on our way? Was it included in your presentation?
No. Yeah, we hadn't counted on a big storm.
Okay.
So
I heard it. I saw the satellite pictures,
Yeah. I can tell you that what Sinker anticipates anyway is the ability for most agencies, to come to a determination of significance in 20 days from the point that you have the full EAF and you have a full application before you. So that's what the state law suggests. It's not mandatory in any way, so that it's only what it suggests. So it's up to the town board.
I'm glad to hear that it's that bird's eye view, so to speak, rather than the narrowed down. I think that's quite helpful because I think there was a little bit of confusion as to if this is supposed to be the end all to everything, and knowing that, hey, there's still more to go. But I definitely think we should get this going for a public hearing. We've been sitting for a while on this law, and I think it's time to get some public comment on the EAF and get it going.
My tendency is to think that we've not done this quickly. I think we went slow because we needed to go slow. And I think that at the public hearing, I'm anxious to hear from the public what their considerations are. I would probably say, Scott, there will be a lot of questions with regard to your traffic analysis. I'm grateful that you went through it all with the town board, and I'm looking forward to a public hearing on this. I'm looking forward to us coming to an end to this.
Great. John and Robin, anything from your standpoint? Anything you want to add? Anything you want to advise the board of on the presentation or the process?
Nothing to add. I think it's a process that is very interesting and telling, and I know that it's accurate because I worked with the guys and the gals. So I think it's quite interesting, some of the numbers that have been put forth, but I think it bears out when you think about what we are doing and what the zoning allows and is offering. In terms of the process, I think getting the EAF put out to the public and to the board kind of officially on the 23rd is a good moment to do that. If you guys get it early in your hands to sort of read it over, that's great. And then in terms of the public hearing, my preliminary discussion with Diana, you may not be able to make the 7th. It may have to push to the 14th, but I think that's fine. So that's really all I have to add on it.
I have a question for John. John, am I correct? This is a process that is similar to what we did for the master plan or comp plan.
The process is similar. We did, with the master plan, we did go the full EIS route. Mm-hmm. But in terms of looking at the, from the broad generic standpoint, that's what we did as well. We didn't look at individual sites, even if they were quite large, and we had some knowledge of what some owners may have liked to have done with them. But certainly in that regard, it's the exact same process, other than that we did do the full EIS on that one.
Right.
Diana, from your standpoint in scheduling, I mean, the 7th is, I understand that the conversation I had with John, and also I think our comptroller might have a few words to say since we have the budget hearing on the 7th. So what do you need in order for us to proceed for the 14th?
If it's possible, I'd like the town board to authorize me to advertise the public hearing for the work session of December 14th.
Make that motion.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we'll set the public hearing, authorizing the clerk to set the public hearing for the 14th. I think that's a big step forward in this entire process. I really do. And I think to Councilwoman Roker's point, we have been very diligent in our approach on this, and that's what we assure the residents of our town that we would be. And we brought in, as you can see, some of, if not the best consultants you can find in the area to fully analyze the potential impact of what this could have. So we're looking forward to hearing from the public. We're looking forward to going through this process and getting more feedback and continuing to work towards a final phase here in this entire process. So the 14th will be the public hearing. I think to our town clerk, we should probably consider a larger venue? And that's the other question, actually, is everyone comfortable with an in-person public hearing?
Yeah, if we go to a larger venue, larger than town hall.
Okay.
The thought was to use the gym.
The gym in the Capellini Center, so we can be spread out. We'll work
Okay.
with Phil, our Phil Marino, to make sure that it's available. But I agree. I think a larger venue so that we can be more spaced out. But Tom Ciangelo points out to me, and you're right, is that it does prohibit us from going live from TV standpoint. So just keep that in mind. Does that change anyone's?
Now people should come and ask the questions that they have, or they can send the questions in, and we'll have the experts answer it that night.
The other, let me throw this other alternative out though, is if we hypothetically use the town hall room for a second, right? And we set it up in a way that allows the board members to be fully spread out. And then we obviously would have to limit the capacity of people coming in. If we did it that way, would that be something that we could consider as a town board? This way we can make sure that it's being televised live for the residents of the town who may not be able to be here.
I get it. It only, remember, we have the consultants that are going to be the ones with us there. And again, the last time we met, we did not do the 6-foot rule. So I'm not sure how many people can fit inside town hall at one point, at one time. And so I don't want to get to a point where people are arguing that they can't get in, that they've come there and they can't get in.
No, I hear you. And I completely recognize that concern. I'm just, again, realizing that we wouldn't be able to televise it for the public live. I mean, again, it was just thought for consideration. But I do understand your concern there, Councilwoman Roper. All right, so then we'll move forward with looking at the logistics of the Capellini Center for the public hearing on the 14th, and the town board has provided authorization to the town clerk to advertise. That's fantastic. Is there any other comments or questions for the consultants before we let them go?
The inclement weather is included in moving forward. You never know.
I mean, I think we would have to address that as it comes. I can't predict the weather in a month from now. But if obviously there's inclement weather, then we would have to adjust accordingly, and we would figure out the right way to do that with our town clerk and her staff.
Well, you can say if you want, and I've seen this before, if it's inclement weather that day, we can have a meeting the next day, if it's possible.
Right. So that's a possibility as well. Or we can just have our highway superintendent pick everybody up in the plow and bring them.
I just want to remind people that what they're looking at is a build-out period over 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what people have to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great reminder. And I think that we need to make sure that we're educating the public about that 10-year period. So that's something that maybe we can collaborate on together between now and the 14th to make sure people understand what exactly the data that our consultants are projecting, what exactly that entails and over what time period. So again, over that 10 years it's not a thing that's going to happen tomorrow. I think that's the point. It's not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in 2. And so that's I think what that whole emphasis is. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments from the consultants, I do want to thank them for their diligent work. I think they've done great work. I want to thank our planning department as well. Again, they've been working on this since last summer, and I know it's been a very tedious task. But I think we're getting very close to the final phase, and I do want to thank them publicly and appreciate all their efforts as well. So I'm very happy with the product we've seen tonight.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Sarah. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Appreciate it.
Okay, good night now. Bye-bye.
Okay. Next, we're going to go to courtesy of the floor. So we will turn it over to Diane, our town clerk, Diana Quast. And let us know who we will be hearing from. As a reminder, all comments are limited to 3 minutes for courtesy of the floor. And also as a reminder, folks don't need to go to courtesy of the floor to voice their concerns. They can always contact any of the town board members or myself. 962-5722, extension 200 is my direct line. mslater@yorktowny.org. And we were always here with the staff to address any of the concerns that residents have. And with that, I'll turn it over to our town clerk.
Okay, the first person for courtesy of the floor is Dan Strauss. We are going to try something new with a timer tonight, so I'm going to share it and we'll see how it works out.
Great.
Okay, Dan, are you there?
Dan, you there? Mr. Strauss?
Hey, Dan.
Nope. Mr. Strauss, you have to. We don't hear you, Mr. Strauss. Did you hit connect your microphone? On the bottom, I think it's bottom left corner.
Still don't have you.
There should be a connect to audio on the left side, on the bottom left corner there, Mr. Strauss. No, we cannot. No, we're still muted. Yep, there you go. Now you got it. It's connecting to audio, so if you could.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Hey, Dan.
If Mr. Strauss, if you're watching on the web, or if you have a TV in the background, if you could just silence that and then jump back on. There was an echo. You there?
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Your video's off there.
No.
Do you have the TV on, Mr. Strauss?
Should I turn the TV off?
Yes. Yes. Turn the TV off, Mr. Strauss.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Loud and clear, sir. Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Strauss, we
Go
can
ahead.
hear you. Can you hear us?
I can go ahead?
Yeah.
It's all yours. 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to say that it's very disheartening that you have to have a meeting that is not in person. For me, and I think a lot of other people. I'm also going to now talk about the solar farms, which I never was going to talk about. But I think I have to continue on about this situation, which I think is outrageous, where the town is considering projects that will allow 1,500 to 2,000 trees to be clear cut. And I'm going to use that term. They're going to be cut to the ground. And I think this is wrong. Both the projects that are involved in this heavy clear cutting should be stopped. There should be a moratorium. And that would give time in event that the tree law determines the amount of trees that can be cut on projects to be looked at and changed and make it impossible for developers to come in, and because they can't put up houses, they then change over to putting up solar farms. As far as I'm concerned, solar farms are fine in commercial areas. They are not fine in residential properties. I'm just checking. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Mr. Strauss.
Okay, I'll go on a little more and then I'll finish up. The mitigation that the developers claim is going to take the place of cutting down hundreds of trees is a lot of hogwash. There is a property, a gas station right across the street from the Strawberry Road proposed solar farm project, which is not in compliance. It has not been in compliance for 4 years. And all the person was asked to do was put up about 15 shrubs. All of them are dead. And no one has followed that up. So you're going to tell me that on a solar farm where they're going to put up 200 shrubs that will take 10 years to grow, that that's going to be a mitigation? No way.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss.
Finally, I'm just going to say that it seems that there is now a contest between housing and solar farms. And that in terms of not having the housing just jumps the price of houses in the town of Yorktown.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss.
So in conclusion, I will say that this solar farm business is an assault on the beauty and the fabric of Yorktown, and there should be a moratorium right now until you can figure out what to do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss. Your time is up. Next
is Susan Siegel.
Good evening, Ms. Siegel. Ms. Siegel, are you there?
Susan,
Susan, can you hear us?
are you on mute?
No. Susan, can you hear us? Ms. Siegel?
It's so previous.
Ms. Siegel, can you hear us? Do we want to go to the next speaker? Oh, wait, here she may be coming on now. Ms. Siegel, you're muted, Ms. Siegel. Ms. Siegel, you're muted. I don't think she can hear us.
Susan, you have no sound.
Oh.
She might not be connected to her microphone.
Why don't we go over to our next speaker, while she reconnects.
Our next speaker is Jenny Sunshine.
Okay. Hi, Miss Sunshine. How are you?
Okay, good, thank you.
Hey, Jenny.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear you? Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll just start. Um, so congratulations on the new board. I know you're all business friendly, and that's good. We all support and our present and new businesses. I know the new board is eager to work with landlords and developers. So I'm sure many here in Yorktown are hoping that you might be able to do a few things to make our lives a little bit better here in Yorktown. Like, for example, work with the landlords of the Triangle Building and the Roma Building to do 3 things. Number 1, improve the facades of the building or remodel the buildings. Communicate and negotiate with landlords to be more fair with their rental fees for tenants. It was very sad to see Mrs. Green's and Panera go. And 3, work to fill the empty storefronts with new businesses that we want and we need. Also, when you are working with developers, I know that all Yorktowners would love it if you could encourage them to seek to build in footprinted areas first, or areas that already have empty buildings, cement structures, or previously cleared land. This does 2 great things at once. It puts the goods and services where people need it, and 2, it fixes the blight or unsightliness of the dilapidated buildings in that area. And I'm positive that all Yorktown residents would love to have something useful in place of the windmill building that is broken down on 202. Now, the other side of the equation, the Yorktown motto, as we all know and we hear all the time, is progress with preservation. So if we make progress, we have to do the preservation. So then, so my suggestions for that are just 3 things, actually. 1, consider reinstalling the Open Space Fund. This was a referendum that the public voted for about 20 years ago, where residents paid a small $30 fee with their taxes, and the monies went into an open space fund to allow Yorktown to purchase open space for the future. Unfortunately, prior supervisor Michael Grace decided to end that fund. Also, number 2, please enforce the tree law, or at least consider ways to encourage homeowners to keep the important trees that they do have on their property, and maybe plant new trees. And then also, I agree with the other speaker that we should absolutely have no trees cut down for solar projects. In conclusion, I've spoken to many folks in Yorktown on this subject, and we all support business and we want development that makes sense. But we also have to preserve our farms, history, open space, parks, natures, trees, habitat, and animals that exist here and now, or it will be forever gone, and Yorktown will move from a suburban landscape to an urban landscape. And I believe we can do both. I think we can be smart. We can do the progress and the preservation, but we must actively work hard to seek that balance. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next.
Susan, do you have your sound on?
Miss Eagle, can you hear us? You want to move to our next speaker?
Our next speaker is Mel Tansman.
Mr. Tansman, can you hear us? If you can unmute yourself, sir.
Thanks, I just unmuted.
Okay, we hear you.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hear you.
I don't hear any, hang on, I don't hear you guys. One moment.
I think they're saying yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think I can hear you now. I'm sorry. I had muted my computer, so it didn't have too many signals going on.
Not a problem.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Tansman. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I want to just express my concern about the continuation of virtual only meetings. I think virtual meetings are great for people who can't come to town hall. However, it's become clear that the technical problems, the difficulties in hearing, and just the loss of the one-on-one ability to communicate with the board is a real loss for our community. I honestly don't understand why we decided to go back to virtual, other than I know that one council member did not want to wear a mask. I think that's his choice, and you know, he should have to participate virtually. I think we can require people to show proof of vaccination. They do it at restaurants in the city. They do it in theaters here in Westchester County. And I think if we have proof of vaccination, we may not have to worry as much about the 6-foot distancing. I just think it's a loss. It makes government less open because it doesn't allow the kind of interaction that we'd like to see. The other really brief thing I wanted to mention is was very interested in the impact statement regarding the overlay district. And I did see that they were basing all their predictions on market rate only housing. I really strongly encourage that 10% of any new housing units built in the overlay district be affordable. And it seems to me, if all of your impact statements are only looking at the the impact of market rate housing, that you've already decided, and I think that's unfortunate. I think you should consider having 10% affordable within that district. That's about all I have to say this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tansman.
Mel?
Thank you.
Susan? Susan, if you can unmute yourself, I think you saw the
Okay, I think I'm back.
Yep.
We got you.
Okay, somebody who's done Zoom before, I don't know why I have the problem, but which ties into my first comment that thank you for playing the overlay hearing in person. But to tie into what I just heard Mel Tansman say, please go back to in-person meetings for everything. On your concern about the overlay and the capacity issue, one solution might be a hybrid if you have it in town hall so it could be streamed live. And I appreciate your concern for that, Supervisor Slater. But then have it on Zoom so you could have any overflow crowd.
Okay.
I think you did do one town board meeting, in
we
that
tried.
hybrid. So that might be the solution and the best of both worlds. If I understood you correctly, the hearing on December 14th is going to be on the overlay law, not just the EAF, okay? And if that's correct, then my question to you is, there had been some discussion a while back that there were likely to be some changes, or there might be some changes in the overlay law, procedural changes, some of which had been suggested by the planning board attorney. Have any of those changes been made? So what will that hearing be in terms of on the overlay law? Because that would be the time to go public with any proposed changes. And if those changes are still contemplated but haven't been written yet, maybe the hearing should be postponed. The other question is, at next week's meeting, will you be referring out the EAF and lead agency designation to all of the involved agencies? And my question is, what is the time frame for them to respond back? I'm not sure, it could be 20 or 30 days. So if you have the hearing on the December 14th, will that automatically have to be adjourned so that you have time? And then you're getting involved with hearings on 2 different boards. So does that become a possible procedural problem? those are the only questions that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Ms. Eagle. Next.
Next, we have Sergio Esposito.
Mr. Esposito, how are we doing tonight? You're on. If you can unmute yourself, sir.
Guys, how's everybody doing?
Good, thank you, Sergio. How are you?
I'm doing well. I probably not going to get the opportunity to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. So
you.
I hope you guys have everyone has a great Thanksgiving, spends it with their family and friends. Just a couple of quick points. On the overlay district, I was pleased to hear that, one of the considerations was that they considered all these different projects, but we really don't know if everyone will be following through with these projects.
Right.
Right now they're just pie in the sky ideas. So I thought that was a very important point that we should all keep in mind. Just to respond to Jenny Sunshine about the Panera thing. Yeah, I know. I mean, I was heartbroken when they left, but I believe, and I met with the landlord, and I believe the part of the issue, or most of the issue, was that Panera Corporate wanted the owner to revamp and remodel, and I think the cost was, astronomical. I think it was like $300,000 or $400,000, and I believe that particular person has 2 or 3 franchises. So I know that the landlord did try to work with Panera, with the owner of that franchise, diligently, but it just didn't work out. So unfortunately, anyway, a couple of just things moving into the future. We have Small Business Saturday coming up, so we're probably going to try to do some kind of a tour of maybe hit 5 small businesses on Small Business Saturday. If anybody has any suggestions, the chamber would be happy to go to any of those businesses and interview them. Give them some publicity, some free publicity. We have our jobs fair, our second jobs fair, thanks to Councilman Ed Lachman for being such a big help with it. That's coming up on November 30th. We have a lot more details that will follow, but if everybody could just spread the word a little bit, if anybody's looking for a job, there will be plenty of opportunities there. And again, we had one last month. We're trying to put some together for the 30th of this month. It will be at the Capellini building, the 6th grade school, whatever we reference it. There is going to be a shop local initiative that I'm working on with the town, just to push people to shop local for the holidays. We're flushing that out, and we'll have more details for that coming soon. And I am trying to bring back the ball drop. We should be good to go on it. I'm planning the details, and I'm hoping that the weather cooperates and we could get what we need to have a nice community event to ring in the new year. Anyway, thanks again, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Sergio.
Thanks, Sergio. Anyone
Mr.
else?
McMullen, did you want to speak?
John, did you want to speak?
Two questions that just came up during the presentation. Number one, it was specifically mentioned that traffic around Perry Street and Wood Street on East Main Street. Now that's been a disaster for 10 years, and it still hasn't been straightened out by that very difficult corner. Does the plan for having to look at various places and to actually doing some reconstruction of the roads, number one? And number two, everyone was bad-mouthing solar farms. Now you have to understand that solar farms have some environmental value in reducing fossil fuel use. Obviously, trees do too. So there has to be a balanced approach to this, that it can't be one's good and the other's bad. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate your time. Anyone else there for courtesy of the floor? No?
Nope, that's it.
Motion to close courtesy of the floor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any comments from the town board? I appreciate everyone's questions and input.
I have a few.
Yeah, please.
I do want to, say I definitely agree with Mr. McMullen. on the balanced approach. And as the liaison to our planning board, I've been extremely impressed with the work and detail that has been taken to make sure that if there's an appropriate site, that it's properly screened and that it's something that's looked at. They've been extremely responsible in their approach to what's happening with solar. Also, with Panera, you're absolutely right, Sergio. They were asked to remodel. They actually closed their White Plains location for the same reason about a year prior, and it is unfortunate. But as I know from my experience working with franchise groups, it's part of your franchise agreement, and it's probably the number one reason for a franchise store going out is that when you get to that remodel, if you don't have the funds for it, you don't make that investment. Let's see. With the job fair, I will say there were quite a few vendors and applicants at the last one. There's still room for more vendors. I know I spoke to one of the vendors, though, on their way out, because there is an area where people can do live interviews, and they walked out with a stack of applications and quite a few. They were thrilled at the amount of viable candidates that they had. So please, spread that word, let people know, and businesses, there are still some spots available. There were a couple of comments about the use of Zoom and live at the same time, but for those of you who remember our first two attempts at that, it was an unmitigated disaster, and to no fault of Diana, who spent hours upon hours with Tom working on it, trying to get that going. And every time we thought we had it, he turned it on, and it was it was crash and burn time. So it's unfortunate that doesn't really work out that way. Oh, and the last thing, it's really a question over to Adam, because some people have spoken about the 10% set aside and trying to do something. But as I remember, did the county not have a problem, or they had a problem with the clustering of affordable housing? And if you were to set aside next to Beaver Ridge, which is 100 plus units of affordable, would that, is that also sort of a trigger in that?
Clustering is something that's frowned upon as a general proposition. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to keep going?
I think that's really it for me, Alice.
Okay. All right. And, I think I agree with what you said with regard to Zoom and a hybrid. One of the things that I'm concerned about is that we don't have the kind of air handling system that you need in town hall. And my fear is that if we went according to regulations and only let a limited number of people in the room, we're going to be stuck with a bunch of people who are very angry, and I don't blame them, because our building is a public building. So I think one of the earlier discussions we had was perhaps the pandemic has given the town a new reason to either want to change its meeting room to a larger room, or completely overhaul its air handling system. But I'd like to address a couple of issues. And I think I'm going to piggyback on you for John and Dan Strauss with regard to solar farms. I think the initial legislation that we wrote, I think it was good. I can only speak for myself. I never thought that what would happen, but obviously it is if you're doing a farm, it is a moneymaker for some people. Now, I think I agreed with Tommy that maybe it's right that we pause a moment and begin to look at what the effects of the current law is. I know for sure that Portland is in the middle of its moratorium and it's looking at it for reasons unlike Yorktown. With regard to the number of trees being cut down, I get it. The idea that someone would have to take down 1,500 trees, that's a problem. Just the number itself is a problem. So I think that, I think Tommy intends to continue to bring his legislation forward, and I look forward to that. And I'd like to move on to Jenny Sunshine. Jenny, I think we agree with everything you spoke about in terms of the rebuilding, in terms of progress with preservation. I think one of the things that doesn't go out the window with this overlay district are the current laws that are in place. You still have to respect the design features of an area. And I believe included in the wording for the overlay, it speaks on that issue in terms of encouraging companies to open spots in areas that may have already been built. I know I've done it a couple of times. I know Matt has brought a lot of people up here. I'm not sure some of what we have is appropriate for 2021. So I look forward to moving with the overlay district because I really believe that what we'll be looking at will be a lot different. And of course, we cannot forget preservation. That's something I think all of us want. I'm going to end there.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Roker. I just wanted to piggyback also on some of the things that Jenny had brought up. The Triangle Center I've spoken with the owners. They are saying that they're going to put forward a facade remodel. We're looking forward to that. It's time. We all know it's time. Something that I've been talking with them directly about, advocating directly for. And it's also why we know that they had no desire to go to residential, because we had that conversation with them about the future of their center, because it's also included in the overlay. So we wanted to make sure as part of the EAF that if they were there was an inkling of a residential transformation, that we knew about it and we prepared for it, but they assured us that they are strictly a commercial property and they have intentions of bringing forward a remodel at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future. I'm anxiously awaiting. I'm hoping it's my Christmas present, but we'll see. Same with Roma. Councilwoman Roker and I both reached out to the folks at Roma, the owners at Roma, requesting them to get re-engaged in that project. That's frankly why it got to the point where we just said that they had to comply with I think it was the lawsuit of 2016 with regards to their parking lot and paving their parking lot. And we gave them a lot of rope because they wanted to continue to push a potential project. And we were trying to be patient and understanding as a government to a property owner and potential business. But once they said, or once they, I think, indicated that they had no intention at this point in time to come back with a project, that's why we said, okay, fine, then you got to go pave the parking lots, which we were very happy to see get done. So we are directly in contact with these property owners. Same with the Falkenberg property, the Cablevision property, thanks to the Remax coming in. That is now completely full. Those signs are down for the first time in, I don't know, what, 3 years, 4 years, maybe?
A long time.
A long time. So we're making, it's a slog, it's a slow process, but I think also to Councilwoman Roker's standpoint, we've brought people up here to come look at these properties and look at the potential and provide a vision. And that's a big motivating factor in proposing these overlay districts, because the zoning regulations are from the 70s. And that's why it looks like 1970 still. So if we can upgrade the code and we can upgrade our zoning flexibility, we're going to get more creative and more and better, I think, product here in the town. Councilman Lachterman is the liaison to the planning board. Councilman Lachterman, update on the windmill property.
So it might be better to throw it to John Tegeter, but I believe there was a something about them trying to save the windmill itself. I know that they're looking. I think it's if I'm not mistaken, because I missed that meeting, the one that I missed this year because I didn't realize they changed the date. But I believe that it was they want to do like a little strip there and try to revitalize that whole building.
Yeah, Johnny, you there?
Yes, I am.
Can you update us on what the planning board what's been before the planning board in regards to the windmill property?
The project applicant came before the planning board and proposed or did a concept proposal, which is a building that's in an L shape that has frontage similar to where the frontage of the building is now, which will be a retail in the front. In the back, it is anticipated to be rental spaces for people such as an electrical contractor or somebody that needs combination storage space, workshop, that type of thing, which is apparently some scarcity in town.
Yeah.
So it'll be retail in the front. The face of it will be retail, and then down the side we'll have some rental spaces behind it. The suggestion was made to save the windmill, at least the upper part of the structure, and incorporate it into the design of the street frontage to save that iconic piece, which everyone has known for many, many, many years, and keep it for its historic value, but also incorporate it into the architecture of the new building. I believe that the applicant is looking into that, and last I heard that they have some positive feeling about trying to do that.
Oh, great.
So there are so I think my point being is that I think we're achieving a lot of the things that you're speaking of, and that's the good news for the town, and we're looking forward to continuing that work. But I think I agree with everyone else that preservation has to be part of that equation. Everything's a balance. It cannot be a one-way street for overdevelopment, and so preservation has to be key. And I think also the board has done some great things in that realm in regards to protecting our environment. I hear likewise the calls for returning to in-person meetings, but I also, to Councilwoman Roker's point, I wish I could tell you that we were situated in a 21st century town hall facility. That's just not the case. And so it does pose other problems that we need to overcome, because as much as we want to see, I would love to have this. I'm getting tired of sitting here by myself. I've been doing it for 2 years now, other than my good friend Diana Quast in the room next to me, and Tom Ciangelo, the best TV producer you can find in town hall in the back room over there. But we have to make sure, though, that it's safe, and we have to make sure that the public's safe, and we have to make sure that the board members are safe, and that our guests are safe, both being members of our community and those coming from outside the community to talk to the board or provide a presentation. So it's a real challenge. It's a real balance. Again, going back to that word, I think that we recognize the importance of an in-person public hearing for the overlay districts. And so I think that we're going to continue to try to innovate. We did try to innovate with the hybrid meetings. We did purchase some new equipment that unfortunately just did not work with our system. But that's something that we're going to continue to be committed to. And if we can find ways to accommodate people, and like I said, I'd love to bring people back, but we just have to make sure it's done in a safe manner. I mean, we all know, I know that people may not want to agree with it or admit it, but COVID cases are going back up. I mean, you've seen a spike in the state of New York again. The town's numbers went up again this week. We were on a very nice trajectory down, and then yesterday we saw a bit of a bump. So, as we're seeing with the colder weather and as predicted, and we just don't know what to expect with the holidays, but that's why these vaccination clinics, we continue to provide the best weapon that we know at our disposal to the community as a local option. And we're trying to do our best to get us back to a normal setting. So, but I do recognize all those concerns and desire to bring us back. And and I share them. So with that, I have no other comments. And I think we can go over to resolutions, unless anyone else has anything they want to add. Okay, resolutions. And I want to again thank everyone for their comments tonight for courtesy of the floor. Resolutions, we're going to authorize the town to apply for the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation grant funding under its New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act in support of the NIWIA cleaning and cement mortar lining of water main project. And you have details in the text of the resolution. We're going to authorize the supervisor to execute the amendment to the August 26, 2016 agreement with New York SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless. We're going to authorize the comptroller to pay Ed Mahoney the cash value of unused time as of his date of retirement, and we wish him the best. I actually ran into his father-in-law at Trump Park at a Veterans Day celebration, which was always good to see him. We're going to authorize the comptroller to process a budget transfer, and this is for out of the open space fund, which was mentioned earlier. And this was done for an appraisal on Stony Street for a piece of property that the Open Space Committee has had their eyes on. We're also going to authorize the release of a performance bond for stormwater permit in the amount of $250 to be for work done at 2795 Quinlan. And that is all the resolutions.
Good to accept.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And with that, if there's no other business before the board, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Yorktown. Have a great night. Stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.